My name is Nancy Ruth Owens, formerly of Clewiston, Florida, Henry County. In August of 1980, I was working for the Henry County Sheriff's Department. This is the time when we killed Sermon Dias Sr. The murder scene was cleared within about a half hour by his son, Sermon Dias Jr., with the blessing of his Earl Dias Sr.'s wife, Dorothy Dias. There were, besides myself, there were a lot of people who were more than happy to see him dead. So it was later, within 2 days, cleared by Florida State Attorney Joseph P. D'Alessandro, who conducted what he called an investigation. And this so-called investigation was where I was taken back to the same house where the murder occurred, which was behind, can't even remember anymore. Anyway, I was taken back to the very same house, and there was a discussion with Earl Dias Jr. and Dorothy Dias, who they did not want to press charges. I wasn't aware of D'Alessandro's involvement with the Medellin cartel until probably within the next 24 hours. Had he... Well, he didn't need to look any further. He already knew exactly what was going on. There was information that certainly could have been shared with him at the time had he sought any information. So bottom line, there was just simply absolutely no concern about the things that were going on in Henry County. Maybe it was pre-planned. Maybe it was Castro's invasion of South Florida. Maybe it was anger from the Hispanic community for being thrown out of town. I really don't know. I do know at some point they began what to me appeared to be white genocide. And again, I've done inventory where it consists of taking out body parts and giving credit in a book for payment to the Hispanics. This happened one time. This was after I had been ostracized by Anthony Toulis and a few other people in the community for working underage at the Glades restaurant. There was a reference, when I did this inventory, there was a reference to the fact that I was a gringo. And again, based on things that happened later on in years, who the victims always seemed to be, which was white. In my opinion, it was. There's no doubt in my mind it was white genocide, an effort to take over. So what I thought until recently was a member of Pablo's crew was a woman we knew as Olivia. Everybody else identifies her as Griselda Blanco. Now, again, Earl Dias Sr. was a very he abused his power. He was he protected the cartel. He protected Anthony Toulis, who may or may not have been mafia. I'm not really sure. He was anything but a officer of the law. She pretty much masterminded the murder, to the best of my knowledge, with my consent, with my very willing participation. She was being maternal. Certain things had happened. Again, he was very abusive. Certain things had happened, and it was not her intent to take him down because he was an officer of the law, although he had been harassing her for things that she had not done, and he knew she had not done certain things for a number of years. She was just simply the fall guy, and she was hunted. She was literally hunted by him. And so she felt very defensive. She very rarely left the house, which was at San Benito Apartments. At some point, I began to have doubts about going through with killing him. And I did, in fact, not that this makes any difference, I did, in fact, try to tell him that, something was fixing to happen, and he just simply laughed. I was working at the sheriff's department. Cindy Gibo worked there also. She was another dispatcher. And he just laughed, and he told me to get on my knees. And he had, I don't remember exactly how it came to be. All I knew, he told me to get on my knees. He had apparently come from was coming from the bathroom or something. I don't know. It was just surreal, and his belt was unbuckled, and he said, "Buckle my belt," and so I did. And it was that was the first and last time I tried to tell him, that they're gonna kill you, and they're gonna kill you. If you don't want to listen, that's, what do you want me to say? So, again, it happened. Her motivation, she may have had other motivations, but a lot of it was maternal. And a lot of it was simply because she was constantly on the defensive. I don't think that she was a part of Escobar's group at this time. A couple of days later, because of the fact that the night that the murder happened, she made a threat against my brother, and she implied that the threat also came from Sam Allison. A couple of days later, I went to her apartment and confronted her. She said, "I won't talk to you unless my husband is here," and then she was referring to someone we knew as Mario. I've seen him identified in magazines as Dario. That's not what we called him. So she told me when he was coming back, and I came back, and I didn't know it, but I was being watched by the Henry County Sheriff's Department. And so I came back later when I knew Mario was home, and I confronted him, which was really, in hindsight, that was very stupid. He had this humongous pistol, which he pulled out from underneath the couch at that time, and just started, he started smiling, and he started tapping the gun against his cheek. And so I left at that point, and I got into my car. I started to pull out, and the next thing I knew was, behind me was a Henry County Sheriff's deputy. And they blocked me. They started coming up to the driver's side, and when they did, I went to the passenger side. I threw open the door and was fixing to run, but then Deputy Berghoff had come around the car, and I was ordered to stop at that point. I don't know if he pulled out a gun or not. I just know I did stop. And he told me to turn around and put my hands on the car, and I was frisked at that point. I don't remember. I know that I told them that the reason I was even here was because my family had been threatened, and I was told to go back into the apartment, to follow them back into the apartment, which I did. They opened up the door. And one of the deputies had really bad scars. And this is where I think the Scarface reference comes from. I very seriously doubt if it's an actual reference to the movie. He was a deputy. He had severe, his skin was clear because he was an older man, but you could tell that he had very severe problems. He was Hispanic. The other one, again, was, if I recall correctly, Deputy Berghoff. I'm not going to swear to that one, but he pulled out a small black gun, and he pointed it at Mario. And he told Mario, he says, "Do you remember what our deal was? Our deal was, if you take one of ours, we take one of yours." So at that point, I was instructed to, he had a second gun on him, and I was given the gun. It was in his left pants leg, and I was given the gun. At that point, he gave me the gun, and he said to shoot, but don't make a mess, because we don't need to be cleaning up the walls. I think I hesitated, because, yeah, I did hesitate. Mario made a move, and as soon as he did, the deputy shot him. And I was still holding the gun, and the gun was pointed at Mario. And he said, shoot. And I said, but basically you've already shot. He said, shoot, just hit in the center of the chest, because we don't need blood all over the walls. Again, I think this was when he was saying, we don't need to clean up the mess. And so I shot him, and blood splattered on the wall. It hit him in the right upper shoulder, and there was some blood splatter. And the deputy laughed and said, well, I guess we're going to have to clean this up. So in the meantime, the other deputy was outside of the door, and the neighbors, of course, heard the gunshots. And he said, he was telling them, go back in your house. It's none of your concern. Everything's fine, so on and so forth. And we left at that point. And I had one deputy follow me behind, and certain other things took place. And then I was in my car. We had pulled into a park. Certain things happened. And then I was released from that point and returned to work, to the best of my knowledge. Curiosity got the better of me, and about 4, 5, 6, 7 days later, I went to the apartment again, knocked on the door, and the assistant manager, a young, he was probably about 25, 28, something around there. He opened up the door, and I said, is Mario and is Olivia and Mario here? And he laughed, and he says, no, they abandoned the apartment, and they were in the process of cleaning everything up, so there were other things that happened between shooting Mario. Olivia was, she was still alive at this point. She did run into the back room. Other things happened, and so I was told to go after her. And again, my motivation was the fact that my younger brother Robert Owens had been threatened, and of course the implication was that my family in general was being threatened. So she never shot her husband, Mario, the one that identified as Dario. I'll share with you later, she never shot the girlfriend, the Girl Scout that was, Sermon Dias Jr. did the things, did what he did, Pablo did what they did, and everything that happened was blamed on other people, and Griselda Blanco was #1 on their Sermon Dias Jr.'s list because of what had happened to Senior. Whether he was a part of planning it, or if he was just cowardly and didn't want to confront, or he knew what was going on. Senior knew what was going on, but a lot of the murders that have been earmarked as hers weren't, and there could have been proper investigations all along. All these years there could have been proper investigations, but that simply wasn't the motivation for the people in this town, the sheriff's department, the state attorney, Joseph P. D'Alessandro, who my understanding is he's actually a cousin of Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi. Based on things I do remember, it rings a bell. And because there was not just similarities, we share the same name. It was also where some of the murders that were committed were actually attributed to her to enhance her reputation. They were not things that she did. Now, is she capable of doing them now? With all these years, I'm sure. Was she capable at this time? Something tells me probably not. So, if your name, for the people in Clewiston, if your name was Nancy, that wasn't a good thing. However, if you had the Nancy name and you were in a position of power, you I don't know what the word is. You used it, you claimed it, you exploited it, whatever. Again, Joseph P. D'Alessandro knew what was going on, and he had connections. They knew what was going on. So there it is.